Tyler, what's up, dude? It's good to see you.
Good to see you.
Yeah, how you been?
Been good. Been busy.
What you been up to?
Just coaching mainly executives right now.
That's sweet. That's sweet. So, like a few years ago, you helped me out a lot when I was racing bikes. You like helped me get my weight down. I was trying to like cut some weight for cycling, and at the time you were kind of just getting started with functional medicine, I think, or maybe kind of like right in the middle of it, but I didn't know that much about it, and you helped me out a lot. But like, walk us through like your progression and how you got started. Take us back to like the beginning of like your sort of like foray into like functional medicine and everything you're doing with Flourish and HPHI and those things.
Yeah, so I've always been obsessed from a bodybuilding perspective. I was an overweight kid. So
really?
Yeah. So
dude, I did not know that.
Not super overweight, but enough to where I was self-conscious, to take off my shirt. And as I progressed into high school, I realized that I wasn't gonna play college ball, I wasn't gonna play professional ball, anything like that. So I just went headfirst into bodybuilding, basically aesthetics. I think I graduated high school at 175, and 18 months later, I was about 260.
Wow.
Yeah, so that was
18 months.
That was a culmination of lifting twice a day, eating anything I wanted, no thought about health, no thought about body fat percentage, just how heavy, how strong, how much bigger could I get? Little brother complex.
Were you lean at that point, or
No.
was it just a bunch of
Oh, I was just big.
Big.
I was just big for nothing. And then met my wife in college, and she wasn't impressed. So I lost 55 pounds or so in probably 8 months. Yeah.
How'd you do that?
Just like you would think, conventional, bodybuilding shred type diet.
Okay.
I didn't go, head first into it. I actually had a buddy who taught me a lot from a dieting perspective, and he was he was stepping on stage.
What kind of dieting is that? I never really did like intense bodybuilding. There was a point in my life where I did some like lifting to try to get bigger and build the physique and stuff like that, but never got so far into bodybuilding that I like got into the nitty gritty of like cutting weight and stuff like that. How do those guys do that? Man,
it's an art. So I'll tell you that I'm not a prep coach. I don't. I've never taken someone from, say, like a guy from 20% body fat to 6% or 5% and dialing that in. There's some guys around here and all over the nation that prep coaches can basically look at someone virtually and do it. See if they're not cutting enough body fat, if they're not dry enough, whatever it is. But it's essentially no sugar, no alcohol. You're looking at macros, percentages, and you're starting everyone off just whole foods. Some people believe in you can still have some fruit here and there, just depending on the timeline. But
protein and veggies.
And rice, oatmeal.
Okay, so some
potato.
carbs, some carbs, but complex carbs, or like low glycemic index.
Yeah,
carbs,
all complex.
Nothing high glycemic index.
No, and some people do require a lot of carbs, but really low fat, and then other people require really low carbs and higher fat. But most everybody, is going to be eating around, I say a gram of protein per body weight. Just conventional stuff. But you're talking people that are so consistent and actually have the necessity behind what they're looking to do, that they're going to go for it. There's no cheating. When you're that consistent for 12 to 16 weeks, you're going to be successful.
Right. So you use this method. You just like cut the sugars, and you're just eating a bunch of protein and veggies and some carbs to cut the weight. And you lost how much weight?
Yeah, like 55 pounds.
You lost 55 pounds.
Yeah, I got down to about 5%.
Wow. Okay. Yeah.
Tried to maintain.
I've been in the 5 and 6% range. It's not easy to stay there.
No,
it's not a comfortable place to be. You're pretty much miserable.
That's right. I couldn't. That was my thing. You lose all that body fat. You look really good, and inside you just feel like crap. But that's
funny, because when I was that lean, I thought I looked good, and my wife hated it. She was like, "No, your face looks caved in. It doesn't look real. You look weird."
Yeah, wives don't like it. They don't like it. Yeah, I was told the same thing. It was, but I was big, and I thought I was impressing people.
So you were still jacked, but
I was big.
Okay.
Yeah, I was big at that point. But I completely just demolished my testosterone. I just drove myself into the dirt trying to maintain it.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's the thing. It took me a lot longer to drop the weight. I didn't do it in 12 weeks. I did it in 6 months. So I kind of dabbled dropped my carbs, figured it out here and there on the way, but I didn't do any cardio. I wasn't spending, hours on the treadmill. I just kept lifting the same and just tweaked my diet.
Yeah. Yeah. And so then how long were you doing that for? Like,
that was in college. So, I put myself through college, personal training.
Okay.
Anybody can really figure out for themselves N=1. You can go a ways with that, but when you really start to figure out how do you manipulate, other people and other genetics and, their season of their life, whatever it may be. So I did that up to the end of college, and then graduated in nursing. Got a big boy job. I had,
as a nurse.
Yeah, as a nurse. I worked in surgery. Cardiovascular surgery was my first job. I should have never got the job. Technically, the other 3 nurses that were there were all 60-year-old females, and it was supposed to be like a really cush job.
Yeah.
And the only reason I got the job was because my boss was an ex-bodybuilder, elk hunter.
Oh, so y'all had some in common, and he was like, I like this dude. So, man, it's funny how that happens, because like you hear these stories of people just getting these amazing opportunities because of mutual connections and stuff like that. So this stuff matters.
Yeah. I learned a lot in surgery, but it wasn't, technically as a nurse, you're learning all this other stuff on the floor, and floor nurse and then surgery nurse is completely different. You're dealing with people who are unconscious, you're just life or death, but still. But I got bored, doing that for about 3 months. I actually met a physician here in town that started an offshore biometric monitoring company, and it was a startup. They got some capital, and I had just walked into his office looking for different opportunities, and they were in the phase of hiring. I had the personal training experience. I was a nurse, so I could actually go in the field and do it. But I had to learn, actual like physiological monitoring, so VO2 testing. We were VO2 testing all these offshore workers, and then we were putting these monitors on them. Equivital was the company.
I can't imagine those guys are the most healthy people.
They're not.
So how does a guy who's not very healthy live up to a VO2 max test? Because it's pretty much torture. You basically torture a person until they stop, right?
We only took them to threshold.
Okay, all right.
Yeah. So, but the point of it was, it started out as a safety pilot. So they wanted to basically look for like heat-related illness, and these monitors we could see. It was skin temperature, heart rate, breathing rate, microenvironment temperature, positioning, and movement. So, you can see if somebody was laying on their face, but in these remote locations, what they were trying to look for was if we could monitor anywhere. So you had GPS location. Mm-hmm. So us sitting at this table, we could basically zoom in on the United States, then Louisiana, then Lafayette, and into this room, and we'd see 2 dots. And if we were both green, that means that we were both below threshold, heart rate wise, skin temperature wise, whatever. But what they found was when they sent me in the field, I had to do, it was in a boatyard, South Louisiana. And a lot of those guys were asking me, I was still pretty big at that point, so they're asking me, what was I doing and what should they do? And so, some guys quit smoking. One guy lost like 50 something pounds. And so what we figured out was that, the budget for safety was there, but if you tethered it to wellness, you can make a much bigger impact, and these companies could afford to implement the monitoring. So Chevron, we did a pretty big pilot for Chevron too, which was like at Venice, and they wanted to implement this not only on land, but on rigs or drill ships, right? So, they flew us. It was actually pretty cool. So we would drive down to, say, Fouchon, and instead of driving all the way up and then coming back down, if you look on a map, you can see that you have to drive north, 45 minutes and then back south to go to Venice. They would just put us on the helicopters and fly us. And a couple of the helicopter pilots are like, who are you guys? Like, we don't fly people.
That's awesome.
So, I did that for a while, and then had some, typical ownership issues with that business. I was not an owner. And, we ran out of money. So I had to go back and, just nurse. At the hospital, I worked on almost all the floors, just got pulled to different floors, learned a ton. Yeah. Some of the other owners got some funding, picked it back up. They needed me to be able to, do the testing, because they weren't they weren't in the health space.
Right,
They weren't
right.
educated how to do it. So
Right.
went do that, and then ran out of money again, and they started a toxicology lab in Mandeville to try and buy back the majority of the company, and that lab started doing extremely well. They brought me and my wife in as partners for that, and then that's where technically I've already had the bodybuilding, the nutrition side of things, the physiological side of things, and then when I got into lab, that's where I really found functional medicine. So
Okay.
So that's where when I had to start looking at the types of testing, what was available, what insurance reimbursed for, I had to look at all that stuff, and then when I figured out
Now, what is functional medicine?
functional medicine is it's a root cause analysis for the human body. So you're looking for the actual problem, not symptoms. So when conventional medicine, let's just say for cholesterol.
Okay.
So you would go to your doctor's office, they would run blood work, they would see that you had quote unquote high cholesterol, and then your physician would give you some spiel about changing your diet, eating low fat foods, right?
Yeah.
So something just generic, and then they'd put you on a statin, which is a cholesterol medication.
Right.
So functional medicine is all about lifestyle, diet, exercise. So technically you
Digging deeper.
That's right. And
Digging
add
deeper.
what the solution is.
Yeah,
Right. So
yeah.
it's what's the problem, and then what choices do you have to make in order to mitigate it? And one is sometimes it requires more lab testing to figure it out. Other times you give people the choice of what they need to do to fix the problem, and then they can do it or not.
So it basically, like, what I find is wrong with modern medicine is most doctors just treat everyone the same.
Right.
And this goes beyond that and tries to like correct that, I guess you could call it a incorrect assumption that everyone is the same, right?
Yeah. Well, you say they treat everyone the same. The issue is they are reimbursed through insurance companies who tell them what they will reimburse for.
Okay, so the problem is actually not the people, it's the system.
It's the system.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
The people aren't bad people. So physicians
Well,
aren't bad people,
yeah,
most of them.
yeah,
You can't,
right.
even in functional medicine, there's some jokers out there. But, technically they want what's best. The problem is their hands are tied.
Got it.
And my clients are paying cash, right? So I do not bill
Right,
insurance.
right.
It's just pretty much,
Right.
hey, let's dig deeper. Let's figure out what the problem is and what you can do to change, and then go from there.
So this is a healthcare issue. It's not, it's like a system issue. It's not is the problem with the doctors also educational? Are they learning the wrong things in med school? Or are they not
They're not learning the wrong things. They're just not learning. I mean, I think they have 30 to 45 minutes of nutrition.
And that's like something that I've like always hated. Like doctors don't seem to know anything about nutrition.
Well, right. Well, they've never actually, I mean, you look at most of the physicians anyway, either if they're overweight or,
Yeah.
sickly, you ask them, or they're guiding other patients, where are they guiding them?
Right.
Right. Or you have the ones that actually are healthy. And the question is, why aren't you telling your patients this?
Yeah.
It's because you can't do that in 7 minutes. Right. So the
Right,
system
right.
is what's broken.
Yeah, it seems a little ridiculous that a doctor can try to diagnose a person, but ignore everything that they put into their body.
That's right.
It makes no sense.
Or their sleep, or, like
Okay,
their training.
so yeah, let's go into all the other things, like, because obviously all the things that you eat that's not the only input. Like you have other inputs like sleep and fitness or sleep and exercise and your environment every day. So talk about that. How do those things play into the decisions you make as a functional medicine practitioner?
Well, I mean, they all play a role, but you just have to figure out which one of, if you think of it as a stool, however many legs you want to say, if it's sleep, nutrition, exercise, general recovery, hormones, all those things play a role. But what I usually do with clients isn't, I'm not going to sit there and, talk to you for 30 minutes or 7 minutes, something like that. I'm basically looking at initially 30 days of what you're doing, and based on your symptoms and what you're telling me is wrong, we're going to look at how are you eating, how are you sleeping, are you drinking alcohol, are you training, are you recovering, like what's your diet look
Got it.
like. All that stuff is basically what I'm looking at ongoing to remove the whatever the thorn is.
So you got into functional medicine and you decided you were going to start a company, and that was Flourish?
Yeah, that was
the
Flourish.
beginning, right?
Yeah.
I remember it being called Flourish in the beginning. I think that's when you and I sort of got involved, and I was like looking for somebody to help me cut weight, but it was mostly muscle that I needed to lose. And like, you can't Google how do I lose muscle mass. It's not
Right.
a lot. That's not something a lot of people want to do. And like for everybody listening, the reason why I wanted to do that is mostly because I was racing bicycles, and having upper body mass doesn't really help you pedal the bike down the road. But yeah, how did you get into, like, how did you decide I'm going to start this company called Flourish, and what did that look like at the time?
Yeah, so when we were working in Mandeville at the lab, we had a consultant come in who's now my current business partner, and he was just trying to, build a relationship with me. And so he noticed that I was, ate up from a training perspective or a health and wellness perspective, and he started asking me some questions. And he was like, "Man, why don't we work together?" And at the time, I wasn't doing that. I may have helped family and friends, but I wasn't charging, to make this an actual business.
Right.
And so for him, his stipulations were, I don't want to exercise, and I don't want to give up my wine every night. Okay. And I mean, even with that, he ended up losing like 20 something pounds.
This is your first client,
yeah,
pretty much.
Yeah, just basically looking at, I didn't have any of the systems that I do now, or knew how to like ask the questions. It was just, let's look at what you're doing and then figure it out from there. So, he started sending me emails of what he was eating and, drinking, whatever it was. And then from there, whenever we decided to leave the lab business, he was like, "Man, you should do this. Like, you should do this for a living." And that's what I told him. I was like, I don't know if this is a need.
Yeah.
Just specifically what I was doing. Because I didn't know, there was nobody at the time that I knew was adding in the exercise with functional medicine, with the diet, all that stuff.
If nobody else is doing it, it's pretty indicative that it's a need.
Well, or you could see what people would adapt to. This is Louisiana. This isn't
right.
So South Louisiana isn't known for wealth or health. Right. So it was something that I just had to figure out along the way. But it took off pretty quick from there. Basically.
So you started off mostly like coaching people and trying to just help them achieve their goals. And most of those people were athletes, or most of them were non-athletes?
No, this wasn't. Yeah, I was just touching everybody that pretty much came to me. It was for aesthetic reasons. So it was
weight loss.
It was for weight loss. It was for fat loss. It was something generic from a health perspective, like blood pressure or cholesterol. They wanted to get off medication, whatever it was. That's pretty much how it started. And as far as referral basis, it took off. At one point, I had like 85 clients.
Wow.
Yeah, that I was
85 people, and you're like digesting their everyday habits.
Every day. I lived in front.
When did you sleep?
Yeah, well, I could do it all day. I could answer the emails, but I had to put together the systems, like I said. But it was, I started to figure out pretty quick. My wife now, that's her business, is Flourish. She took that over.
Okay.
And I kind of, anyone that you coach, this is basically what I tell everyone when I get on a call with them, is they want help, right? And then there's only really two types of clients, and it's the people that, they've tried everything and nothing's working or worked for them, or they know exactly what they need to do and they can't make themselves do it.
They don't want to do it.
So it literally, there's a spectrum, but those are the two ends of it. And so I ask them, what do you think you need? And most of the time, if it's like investigative work, if they have to do some kind of lab testing, or I just want to see what they're doing, from a lifestyle perspective, based on what they're telling me, I start, I say coaching them. I'll take them in for 30 days and look at it. And then, especially if it's a female, and once I've gone through my whole spiel, I'm looking at what they're doing and kind of give the quote unquote diagnosis, if you will, I'll pass them on to my wife.
Okay.
And so she's like the lifestyle implementation for females.
I think that was one of the interesting things when you and I worked together. You were like, yeah, I like work with you for a month, and then you can just go off and, do it on your own. And I was like, I'd never heard that. I was like, wow, okay, that sounds like somebody that cares, and not somebody that like wants to milk me for, a monthly fee for the rest of my life. And I was like intrigued by that you were like, look, let's spend a month figuring out what to do to get you to like lose some weight. And then I'll teach you how to make your body lose that weight. And then whenever you want to do it, you just do it.
All right.
And that worked out for me because I'll eat dirt if it gets me where I want to be. But that's not everybody.
No. And that's it's a terrible business model. Terrible business model. But that is the difference, though. So I'll tell people sometimes it may be 2 or 3 months that we work together, because either it's going to take some time. I have some people with, they've been having IBS for years, or they have autoimmune issues, right? And when you try to explain to them, hey, let's clean up your diet, let's figure out, we can run some lab tests. But you can empty your bank account running lab tests. So
Right.
what I try to do is, hey, let me see what you're doing, see if I can troubleshoot, suggest some things, remove some of the symptoms. Then if you're not moving in a good direction, let's go ahead and run the labs and see, especially hormones. I mean, that's pretty low hanging fruit. But I mean, you just nailed why I moved towards, either working with executives, or if, people served in like the armed forces, if they played collegiate ball, right? Or they were a professional athlete.
So you've kind of started honing in on a different clientele.
Yeah.
You like moved that business, and you were like did you start like turning people down and saying like, I'm sorry, I can't help you?
Yeah. And well, I mean, and that's why I initially do the 30-day, right?
Okay.
So the 30-day, people, what they think they need is not always what they need. Right. And so once I started figuring that out, if it was just, hey, say take a woman who just had a baby, right? And she's like, I want to lose this weight. I know right off the bat, it's just going to be for Lacey, my wife. That's not they came to HPHI, but it's like, hey, it sounds like you probably need coaching.
And so Lacey's coaching monthly.
Yes.
And then she just sticks with them.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. So I had some clients previously that pushed me to create what's called Highlight. So Highlight, I built it, in Kajabi, right? It's my community, if you will, for clients ongoing, but it's a place that, what they were struggling with was, man, they would never save anything that I sent them, or, anything that I created.
Okay. So this is like a database of like everything all of your resources.
Yep.
Okay.
All my infograph, all the, mainly the questions that clients ask. So I answer them anonymously inside of Highlight, but some of my executives before were like, man, how do we get access to you, or the ability to ask questions, or like new supplements, or anything that comes on the market? How can we ask you and get your opinion on it without paying coaching fees?
Right.
So I created Highlight, and it's $15 a month, right? And so essentially, that's why I don't push people for coaching fees. A lot of people don't need day-to-day coaching,
right?
They just need. But if it's just problem
You
solving,
just need information.
that's right.
Yeah. Okay, so you have, Flourish over here. Lacey's mostly doing that sort of coaching. And then what are you doing through HPHI? You said you were working with executives mostly and athletes?
Yeah, so HPHI is the functional medicine arm, right? So essentially, those are the ones that if I pull them through and I'm looking at what they're doing for 30 days, at the end of the 30 days, if they need coaching, it's going to be because they fit, in one of those buckets I just named.
Right.
And there's a reason for that. And it's because if you've, served in the armed forces, or you own a business, or you played college ball, or you are a professional athlete, you want to win.
Right.
You aren't kicking tires.
Yeah.
When, like for you, for example, if I told you to eat dirt, you'd eat dirt.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm coaching a guy now who is knocking on the door of, pitching for the Yankees.
Wow.
And if I told him to do anything, he's going to do it as long as he's seeing the benefit. He's not going to, well, I don't know, and I was just sad today, and there's no excuses, right? And so what you figure out is either people need the coaching, right? They need the accountability, or they need answers, and no one's being able to give them answers.
So Flourish is the accountability arm.
And for women.
And HPHI is mostly the answers.
Yeah.
Like, here's what you got to do, go do it.
That's right.
Okay.
And my current business partner and I have, it's called HP3, but we don't really market that. That is our executive coaching, group. We have a group of guys that I play concierge nurse to them. Essentially, they can call me for anything. We run whatever lab work on them, but we are basically looking at their business. We're going in and building systems and helping them with leadership and, all that stuff. That's my bread and butter. I, love doing that. But so
that's not just health based. That's way beyond.
Yeah, that's beyond
health.
That's like
that's cool.
Inside the business, the systems, like trying to scale their business.
Okay.
But the health piece is what's sexy to most people. So to get them in the door, they're like, I don't really think I need leadership. I don't think I really need better systems. But the health piece, that's interesting. And once you kind of, get them in the door, they all say it. Once they get in the door and they experience it.
Yeah. So the majority, like from an HPHI standpoint, the majority of the people you're working with are these CEOs and these athletes. What are the kind of athletes you're working with? Is it mostly endurance athletes or strength athletes or people playing ball?
I would say more endurance. I mean, I have one-offs, as far as like professional, but it has to be referral based. It's have to be somebody that is either, training them. I mean, look, he has his own training. I mean, it's from the Yankees. Like, I'm not gonna sit here and tell you I could better coach. But he has an Oura ring, right?
Okay.
So, I mean, I log into his stuff. I can see his recovery. I can see his, his HRV, how he's sleeping, all that stuff.
And
We can dial
HRV,
in.
just for everybody who doesn't know what doesn't know what HRV is. HRV is heart rate variability.
That's right.
And that is a strong indicator of how well recovered you are.
Right.
So why don't you expand on that a little bit for people who aren't familiar with that, because that was one of the things that you introduced to me that I was not previously aware of. And now this HRV, or this method of using the HRV to determine how much you need to train, is kind of going wild because it's working.
Right. Well, HRV is, heart rate variability. So essentially everybody thinks that, you have a heart rate, and it beats, like a metronome, right? And it's on cue, exact, precise, and it's not. So as you take in a deep breath, as you exhale, it oscillates. So it may speed up, it may slow down, right? And the difference in how it's speeding up or slowing down, what we're measuring is the distance of time in between each heartbeat.
And the variability of of that time interval.
That's right. So when you're hungover, if you're overtrained, if you don't sleep, if you look at it, there's very low variability, which means it is closer closer to a metronome. Right?
So consistency in your heart rate is actually not good.
Correct. For recovery.
Yeah, you want it to be highly variable.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, and you have to take that with a grain of salt. So most of the people that I'm training with, so take you, right? If you go climb some huge peak, say in Utah or whatever, you would expect the next day that you would have low heart rate variability.
Right.
The issue is you don't want that consecutive days. You don't want to have low, 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 because you're not recovering and you're moving in the opposite direction.
Right.
But you do have to cross that threshold of, say, getting a little worse. So breaking yourself down, the same as bodybuilding. You're breaking it down, but then you want to recover above your baseline.
Yeah.
That's all it helps you do, is basically assess that.
Yeah, I think like a lot of people don't realize that you're actually not getting stronger when you work out.
Correct.
You're getting stronger when you recover after you work out. You tear your muscles apart during the workout and they rebuild.
That's right.
And so you actually get stronger when you're recovering, not when you're working out.
You're training. That's right.
When you're training.
When you're sleeping.
So the training aspect is important, but the recovery is even more important.
Yeah, the recovery is the mecca. That's why, even in professional baseball, when they're using growth hormone, it's not so that, they can hit further and they're stronger than most people. It's because they can recover faster.
Right.
So if you can put in more volume, right, with a healthy body, then you're going to get better faster than your competitors who are not.
Now, are some people just naturally able to put in more volume and recover better?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so your ability to recover is also somewhat genetic, or you're predisposed to that.
Yeah, I mean, you have some people that you just have to pay more attention, though. So technically, if we were both runners, right, I may only be able to run, say, 2 10-mile loops, right, or 2 days a week. Right. You may be able to do it 4 days a week with good HRV, which tells me you're going to have to run 12 to 15 miles, right, because you're not creating enough of a stimulus.
Breaking it down.
That's right, enough of a stimulus. But other people, you don't know that. If you were to go ahead and just guess, no, I don't need that much sleep. Let's see.
Right. That's something that I kind of struggle with sometimes, is the recovery part.
Which part?
Because I just want to go.
All right.
Like I do a hard day or whatever, and I could go do some like crazy run or whatever in the mountains, or go for a like long bike ride, and then I'm like tired, and the next day somebody calls me and they're like, "Hey man, you want to go do this?" And I'm like, "Yep."
Well, and that's the difference between pulling back a dog who wants to fight or hunt, as opposed to trying to quote unquote motivate. I mean, that is, people around here know. If they say that word, it's like, hey, well, I just think I need some motivation and really empower me. I'm like, that's not what I do. I'm not motivating my clients.
Right.
They're already motivated. We're just trying to figure out the simplest, most effective path to get there. So, I mean, as far as recovery, that's always a key, especially with executives. We're talking about athletes. I mean, but if you own a business and you're trying to train, these people that are doing, Ironmans or marathons, and they own a business, it's always like, all right, let's talk about what type of runway we're looking at for training.
They're not sleeping a lot.
And they're stressed. Stress is stress.
That's the problem. It's not the training. It's actually all the other stuff. It's the work.
All right.
You own a business. You're married to it.
That's right. Well, that's another thing, right? So if you're married, you have kids, right? You're trying to train. You own the business. Like that, all that stuff adds up. But you can actually see. I mean, I have data that I've saved of people with like their Whoop bands on, and I would ask them like, what was going on here? Like, were you climbing the stairs? And they were firing an employee. So like you're looking at you're looking at stress and heart rate, right? But you can see it on there, so everything counts. It's not like, oh well, no, I just went run a 5K or a 10K. It didn't have anything to do with the exercise. It's just, your brain controls that.
That's crazy. That's crazy. So are you like building training plans for these athletes and stuff?
No, I have some training, inside a highlight, just depending on the goals. Like,
So you sort of leave the actual endurance coaching to an endurance coach, and you are mostly the life coach that handles the big picture.
yeah, I hate that term though.
Oh, okay.
It's so bastardized.
All right, what are we going to call it?
No, I just say performance, because life coach is,
Right.
if I was teaching someone how to have a good life, that means that I have it all figured out.
Tell them
and
play
none of us
outside
do.
every day.
Yeah,
You'll
none
have
of
a
us
good
do.
life.
Make a lot of money and just, be
Yeah.
happy. Choose to be happy.
Try to figure out how to not work and play outside all the time.
That's
and
it.
that's
or love
it.
work. Just
Yeah.
love work. And
Yeah.
have your family love it too.
Yeah.
No, but I don't. I'm not going to sit there and tell somebody like, let's just take Will Jones, right?
Yeah.
So he's training people how to, get faster and ride further on a bike, and
Yeah.
he has that dialed in because that
Yeah.
is his niche.
Yeah.
I would tell somebody, they're like, man, I really want to, race on a bike. Okay, what are you currently doing? Right? And if they say nothing, I would say, okay, I can probably help you. And at some point, I won't be able to help them. And
Right.
that's going to be like, okay, so I really
need an endurance
That's
coach.
right. You actually need a cycling.
And that's how things worked when you and I worked together. Will was coaching me from an endurance standpoint. You were helping me with the nutrition and the sleep and the stress and all of those things, and sort of like giving me advice on those things. And
Yeah.
that actually, like, the two things actually like worked really well together, and I was able to like lose a bunch of weight and keep my power on the bike, and everything was great until I
Yep.
broke my collarbone.
Yeah. Well, most of the time, that if I'm asking someone like you a lot of questions, it's show me what you're doing and let me ask you. And if you don't know why you're doing it, then you're not going to succeed later on. If you know
Right,
why,
right.
but then we're looking at the right numbers, that's all I had to show you is let's just look at your recovery numbers. Right. But usually two consultants, that doesn't work. It doesn't work in business. It doesn't work in
Yeah,
coaching. I can't
yeah.
tell you to do less and then your cycling coach is telling you to do more. So
Yeah.
I'm very cautious about treading those waters.
Yeah,
So-
that's got to be a difficult situation. You mentioned something a while ago that like kind of caught my ear. You said that if you love your work, it's less stressful.
Correct.
That's something that I realize, and like I love my job. I have an engineering job that I love a lot. It's a lot of fun. I enjoy it every day. And I also have a photography career and now apparently I have a podcast. But people have often asked, recently, especially with the show coming out, if I'm going to quit my job and try to just do photography. And the answer is no. And they want to know why, because it seems like the photography and the mountain endeavors and the things I do in the outdoors are so much more fun. But for me, the engineering is just as much fun. It's just a different kind of fun. It's a different part of my brain, and it's actually nice to bounce those two off of each other and use both. So I enjoy that, and so I don't want to quit my engineering job. Not at this moment, but it's not a stressful job because of that. And when I leave that job, I'm able to completely turn it off and just go into the mountains and like do my photography thing and like climb and run and all of that stuff. But as a person working with people, do you notice an actual difference in the amount that a person can recover because of whether or not they love their job?
Well, yeah. Well, you'll get down to that, right? So you'll find out, is it a job? Is it owning the business?
Right.
What are the actual stressors? So those are the types of questions that you have to build a relationship with someone to be able to ask that type of question, the deeper you dig,
Yeah.
right? But also for you, why haven't you started an engineering company?
The company that I'm currently working for, I feel like, first of all, I have stock options at that company. And so I've got something to work for. And the other side of things is I've worked for several privately owned engineering companies, Blaine being one of them, and I saw the stress involved in that.
That's right.
And the stress that's involved in running a business is more than I want. And even though there's more upside and you kind of have some autonomy and stuff like that, I have enough autonomy in the job that I have now, and I have enough freedom and input, and my opinions are valued, and those are the things that I want. And the upside from actually saying I'm the owner is not worth the additional stress that would come along with that. So that's absolutely, I will never do that.
All right, but you know that. It's not right out of school. You were like, oh, this is my first job, and I'm just stuck here. You've had to go from job to job and figure out what you wanted.
Yeah, I bounced through a few engineering firms, and I saw the stress that those owners and engineers had, because they were not just engineers, but they were also running a business, And, you know, there was like definitely a point where I was like, yeah, I would love to own an engineering firm. And then there was a point where I was like, never in my life am I going to own an engineering firm, because it's going to consume my life and it's going to take away from the things I want to be doing
Right.
after work. I like being able to get off of work and shut it down.
You say shut it down, but you moved to Utah. You know, you're not going to Red Laurels here and that. You're going to climb out. You know what I'm saying? So you think about the life you've built.
Yeah.
Most people, when you have to dig down, they're like, man, I just don't know. I don't know what's wrong. You know, I don't know if I have some kind of, you know, they'll Google their symptoms and, you know, they either have cancer or they have Lyme disease, you know, whatever they're figuring out. But the reality is, okay, well, let's look at, you know, your recovery. And then they drink every night. How much are they drinking? A lot. Why? Well, just to wind down. Like, you have a good life, you don't have to wind down from it, right? And that's the stuff, that's the tough questions you have to really dig down to. And look, that's the choice I was telling you about. So all we have is choice and consequence.
Right.
People do not like to hear that. So most people, this is something we say I picked up at the Institute, Thayer Institute, was most people prefer a problem they can't solve to a solution they don't like. And
I like that.
That's the majority of people. So when you point out, hey, look, I think this is wrong. You know, you're not sleeping enough. You're drinking too much before bed. You know, you're staying out too late. You're eating crappy food. Well, no, that's not it. That's not it, right?
Yeah.
You need to run some tests to see what's
Got
wrong.
to be something else.
That's right. And so they don't. If you tell them this is the problem, hey, so maybe we can solve it this way. No. On to the next doctor.
People want a pill.
That's right.
They want a pill.
And if they say they don't,
that's crazy, because I'm totally the opposite. I hate taking medicine. I haven't taken ibuprofen in probably 9 years. And I was told a long time ago that ibuprofen was bad for you, and there are reasons you can either confirm or deny that right here.
Too much of it is, it's a problem consistently.
And one of the things I think that scared me the most about ibuprofen specifically was that I listened to a podcast where there was this like really, you know, like well-educated doctor who was saying that it actually dulled a response in your body that allowed you to build up and recover after a workout.
That's right.
And that scared me enough to say, okay, well, I'm done with that. You know, like
I'll just eat a hole in your stomach.
You know, how does it eat a hole in your stomach?
Oh, I mean, it's a COX-2 inhibitor. That's what it's doing. You know, over time, you start to break down that barrier.
You know, what's really scary is that when I was young and playing baseball, I was probably taking 4 to 6 Advil a day.
Yeah, and you were young, and you could, you know, recover from that. It's a whole different ballgame.
Okay, so when you're saying when I was young, I was actually better able to handle the Advil than I am now.
Oh yeah, most of the time that is the problem. I mean,
I thought maybe there was like actually the opposite. When you're young and developing, sometimes things are like more.
It can be
worse for you, or they're worse for you when you're young because you're still developing.
But, yeah, they can be, but you have to think we're still developing. So most of the people I work with, that's when they're like, well, man, I've been eating like this for years. And like, right. So you're not playing college ball anymore, right? You're not, but they still eat the same because that's habitual. The training wasn't habitual.
Yeah.
Right. Like for you, you could probably eat, you know, pretty much whatever you want, but you're so active. You're not going to see it on the scale. You're not going to see it in the mirror. You're not going to see it in your clothes.
Right.
Like once we start to dig down, you are probably one that we'd see a lot of inflammation. So it's like, hey, you're going to have to start eating better.
That's interesting.
Well, that's just most of the people we operated on in cardiovascular surgery weren't overweight. People think, oh, they're probably 400 pounds hanging off the table. No,
I think that's a misconception. Some people think that if you're not overweight, you're healthy.
That's right.
It's totally false.
Oh,
it's like the worst possible thing you can assume. Because I know a lot of people who are not overweight, and I watch what they eat, and I'm like, dude.
If you looked at their lab work and you saw like inside their arteries, it's bad. I mean, but that's like people that smoke. People that smoke and drink alcohol all the time, they're not overweight, right? Most people are skinny. I mean, nicotine will drive metabolism, right? And if you're drinking, usually you're not eating a bunch of crappy food, but you are riddled with inflammation.
So you need to see the lab work.
Yeah, I mean, most of my guys, I have them run, certain inflammatory cardiovascular panels along with like hormonal panels just annually. Let's just take a look, because if we figured out what's worked for you, just go ahead and maintain that until that's not working. But let's just see yearly if it's working,
So what about an athlete who's trying to optimize their performance? If I'm like a competitive cyclist or a mountain runner or whatever, and I want to just get better, and I'm just like training a lot, like I'm training 15 hours a week, but I'm eating cheeseburgers, and like that's obviously not helping my performance, even though I'm burning all the calories and I look fit and I'm lean and I'm fast. There's inflammation in the body that's slowing me down.
Could be. I mean, you're dealing with endurance athletes already. You're tearing up with that much blood being pumped through your body at that intensity, you're going to shun it away from your gut, right? So most endurance athletes have quote unquote, air quote, leaky gut, right? I hate using the term just because people, they overuse it.
They've ruined that one
just
too.
bastardize it. Yeah. So,
what is leaky gut?
Leaky gut happens when, so your intestinal lining is very, very tight. There's one cell layer thick. Okay. So any type of, inflammation, if you eat, and this depends on the person, let's just say we're going to use gluten because people love to use gluten. So if you are intolerant to gluten, right, if you do have Crohn's, what happens is you start to create a ton of inflammation in the body. Well, those what we call tight junctions start to separate due to the inflammation. Okay. When that happens, think of if you were eating a string of pearls. Okay. So you chew on them, you swallow them. Technically, in your stomach, when you chew things, it goes through. When it gets to your small intestine, only one pearl is supposed to be getting through. Those are the proteins. Okay. That's supposed to, one pearl thick, get through the lining. When you start to separate them, 2 and 3 and 4 string of pearls are getting through the lining, and your body, your immune system is attacking that.
So things, once they hit, this is the small intestine, large intestine? Small intestine. Things, once your food ends up in the small intestine, the proteins from the food are supposed to go through the lining.
Yes,
but at a controlled rate.
And size.
And you're saying that leaky gut is when inflammation allows more of those proteins to go through at a higher rate.
And too big. They don't, basically one pearl, and I'm dumbing this down. This is a whole different explanation.
So he's saying that a pearl is a protein. And one pearl is supposed to go through at a time.
Yeah, and we're talking about amino acid, right? So protein is strings of amino acid. So that is supposed to get through, and the body identifies that as, hey, that's been broken down by the digestive system, and it's been absorbed into the body. It can go to rebuild something, right? Replenish, whatever it is. What happens is if it doesn't identify it because it's 2 and 3 and 4 pearls long, the immune system attacks it. Okay? That's what autoimmune disease is. So that could be Hashimoto's for the thyroid, that could be migraines, it could be rheumatoid arthritis. That's essentially what happens. It just attacks the different parts of the body because your immune system creates the antibodies.
It's like, what's going on?
Oh yeah,
this is not normal.
That's right. And your joints take the brunt of it, but your body's not trying to attack the joints. It's attacking the other food, molecules that it doesn't identify.
So what are some symptoms of leaky gut?
Oh, I mean, it depends. Everything I just said, the whole autoimmune spectrum is what I've seen as a problem.
So you're saying somebody who has migraines could potentially have leaky gut?
Could be, yeah.
And it could be leaky gut that's causing the migraines.
Yeah, arthritis.
But if they go to the doctor's not going to...
Well, no.
No.
But you have to look at the testing too. That's why I'm saying, like, you can identify, there's a stool test that I usually run.
So it's easy to diagnose.
Yeah, it's easy to identify if you have leaky gut or not.
How do you fix it?
Diet is one.
Okay.
But you have to find out which foods you're eating. So that's where it gets really nuanced. So you may not respond poorly to, let's just say, like,
gluten.
Yeah, or like rye bread, anything. There's a ton. Yeah. So like you have gluten, right? And you have dairy, which are the main culprits, right? We're just going to say gluten, but it's usually processed foods.
I've been on the side of things that I think the whole I'll be honest, I think the whole gluten intolerance thing is kind of bullshit.
Right.
And I might be wrong. Here to figure out
here
to figure out if I'm wrong or not. But I will say this, dairy messes me up.
Yeah, it messes most people.
I love it. I like milk a lot, but it doesn't, and I can't even put my finger on what it does to me. I can't say, it doesn't make my stomach hurt. It doesn't make me not feel good. It just makes me feel gross.
Right.
Like my nose runs and just things don't feel like they're running right when I eat dairy. And it always, like, every time I drink a cup of milk, I'm like, man, this is the best thing ever, and tomorrow's gonna suck.
That's right.
Like, I'm just not gonna feel good tomorrow.
No, but so it's not gluten. So I'll tell you right now, I could eat a whole loaf of Evangeline made bread and not have any issues whatsoever. At least that I could identify as immediate, right? But if I ate like a piece of like Udi's, gluten-free bread or something like that, I mean, I will get swollen from like gassy, bloated. Like, I look 6 months pregnant.
So you're saying the gluten-free bread messes you up?
Correct.
Why is that?
Well, it could just be the starch. Like, I haven't taken the test to see, but
that's one of the the theories is that it's actually not the gluten, it's just some other stuff.
It's the other stuff.
That just so happens to be in stuff that also has gluten.
That's right.
And so gluten gets the scapegoat.
Right. Well, it's the sexy term. It's like everything else, right? Just because it's popular, that's what people are going to go with. Now, look, yes, I mean, when you have Crohn's, like when you have issues that are directly tied to gluten, that is an actual problem that you're responding poorly to.
Celiac disease,
That's right.
Crohn's disease, all of those people really can't handle gluten.
Yeah, that's right. That's clearly identified.
Non-celiacs, non-Crohn's gluten intolerance is a slippery slope.
Well, and that's what I'm saying. It gets really nuanced. Like you have cross reactivity. Some people, like you hear the stuff, Stephen Gundry's book, like for lectins, right? People are like, oh, well, I heard you can't eat bell peppers and tomatoes because of the lectins. I'm like, okay, so let's, but that's what I'm trying to tell you.
This is new to me because I love bell peppers and tomatoes.
But that's on, you can't do that for everybody. So that you are on a whole different level. So you notice when you drink milk that you get a runny nose. Like some people would tell you, oh, I could eat anything and I don't have any issues. Mm-hmm. Right. But they're still 30 pounds overweight. They're not sleeping. Right now they're starting to get on a CPAP machine because they're snoring because they're 30 pounds overweight. So when you identify like, what are you eating? And let's remove the, lowest hanging fruit. That's when you start to identify, hey, this food appears, to be a culprit for you. You can always run tests. I mean, there's a company, Cyrex, runs these arrays, right? They have like array 6 all the way to like array 14. And when you get that high up the totem pole of the arrays, they're showing like cross reactivity. So like you're responding poorly to, say, squash because it cross reacts on a gluten sensitivity scale. Okay, you follow me?
Yeah.
So that gets really,
it's complicated.
Yeah. Well, that's subtle nuances, but that's what I'm trying to tell you. And most people, that's what they're going to Google and go, hey, I think this is my problem. I'm like, it's probably something else.
I think it all stems from a problem that's prevalent in humanity, and it is the humans' desire to put a label on something they don't understand.
That's right.
And that's not just with food. That's with people as well. I think and I see a lot of people who talk about athletes that are at a very high level, and they try to label those athletes as freaks or genetically gifted, or they always come up with an excuse.
That's right.
And this is happening here, where let's like try to simplify something that I don't understand. Let's just throw gluten under the bus this time and say that it's gluten, but it's actually something so much more complex.
Yeah, and nobody wants to take that path, right? They all just want, hey, give me the answer, and I'm going to go ahead and implement it. That's what I was telling you.
And the food industry just wants to sell gluten-free stuff.
That's right. Well, look at the labels. I mean, you have cereal that's like, hey, there's, you're looking at Lucky Charms, and it's like, hey, no, we've added this many whole grains. And it's like, what are we talking about? Like, you have marshmallows, like in your cereal. But people are, that to them, it's like, no, this is different. Or like Cheerios, like heart healthy. Where in the world is that heart healthy? Like, ask anybody who is worth their weight in salt from a dietary perspective, and they're going to tell you right off the bat. Like,
nothing heart healthy about Cheerios.
Like first choice is always like, oh no, fruits and veggies. But hey, no. Oh, what you eating? Oh, kashi? No. You need to eat Cheerios because Cheerios is going to help you in your cholesterol. And dude, it's nonsense. Yeah. It's nonsense. But then again, I mean, that's the whole.
I did blood work the other day, and actually my cholesterol is like a tad bit high, like 130.
Did you just do total cholesterol?
Something like that. No, they did LDL and HDL. I would have to pull the numbers out and show them to you, but the doctor basically said to pull back on the red meat and stuff like that. And I don't know, you kind of smirked, so maybe that's nonsense, or I don't know what
So cholesterol itself, you're looking at total cholesterol. Okay, so keep in mind that cholesterol, if it's triglycerides, right, they're hydrophobic, so they can't even be in the bloodstream. So they have to have a vessel that carries them. Okay, so that's where lipoproteins come in. So when we say like LDL, that's low density lipoprotein. HDL is high density. Okay, so think of LDL as taking cholesterol from the liver, right, and it's bringing it to the rest of the body. Athletes sometimes have higher LDL because they're training all the time. When you're recovering, if you're creating micro tears in muscle, right, you need cholesterol to rebuild, and that's where people miss the point. So you don't want low cholesterol. What you want is those little carriers, those little vessels. They're different sizes, and this gets super complicated. Like, so you think that just the cross-reactivity gluten stuff's complicated. This gets really complicated. But the way I explain it to people is, think of we were talking about, you have a lake, okay, and you have 1,000 people on that lake, that would, let's just say, is total cholesterol. All right.
Okay.
And then when we start talking about LDL, I want to know. So just telling me they have 1,000 people on that lake, whatever, size boat they're on, they're like, no, it just matters about the people. That's what conventional medicine tells you, is that LDL cholesterol is about the people on the lake.
Yeah.
What I want to know is, are there 2 yachts with 500 people apiece, or are there 500 kayaks with 2 people apiece?
Right.
It's a big difference.
Which one's better?
The yachts.
The yachts.
You want the bigger that's carrying more. If you have smaller, right, that are less dense. So let's get back to what heart disease is. Heart disease is not like you're putting grease into your sink or a hose and then it's starting to get more and more grease clogged up, and then the lumen is getting smaller and smaller and less blood, less water is flowing through. What happens is it's like a pimple inside of your artery, okay? So you have one like cell layer, okay, that's inside the artery. What happens is you get inflammation and little oxidized LDLs, these little tiny ones, right, that get inside the wall, and then the body fights it. So it's like a zit underneath your skin. Well, as that starts to get bigger and bigger and bigger, it could occlude, right, the actual vessels. So if it's your heart, your coronary arteries, you're basically occluding those. Or if it pops, now your body's going to hurry up and try and clot it off like it would if you cut your finger. That's a problem.
Yeah.
Now you have a clot that's formed
in your heart,
in your
arteries.
That's right. So that's it's not, you have too much cholesterol. That doesn't tell me anything. I mean, I've seen people with, cholesterol over 300, but their particle counts are beautiful. But I've also had people that had beautiful cholesterol markers from a total cholesterol, LDL, HDL, but there's one marker. So I forgot his name. I think it's like Bob Harper, the guy that was on The Biggest Loser, the coach. He had a heart attack. His cholesterol numbers were great, but there's a particle called LP(a), so lipoprotein(a), that is notorious for causing cardiovascular disease. And it's highly genetic. So that is one that I tell people, people say it's my genetics. That one is. The rest of the stuff is not.
Yeah.
But I've had people too that had heart attacks and their whole cholesterol panels were gorgeous. They never ran those markers. We ran them because different labs run this. It's not like I have this lab that does it. There's a few labs that run it.
Right.
But if you dig deeper, you can see, let me see what my, LDL particles look like. So which ones as far as small or less dense, and then your HDL, and then you still have like HSCRP and homocysteine. I mean, you have other markers that show inflammation that are more indicative of cardiovascular disease. So them telling you, hey, stop eating red meat. It's like, most of the cholesterol you eat, it just depends on the person. Some people can just pound bulletproof coffee, right? But most of their cholesterol issues were from too much insulin. So it doesn't matter. They can pound butter and all this stuff and their cholesterol goes down.
Yeah.
Other people, their total cholesterol may go up, their LDL may go up, their particle sizes go down, and then their HDL also goes up. So LDL takes it away, HDL brings it back to the liver.
Okay.
So there's a cycle that happens there. So that's why if people have high LDL and low HDL, most physicians are like, oh no, that's a bad thing. And technically it may be, but it's way more indicative if you look at the actual number of particles. So the kayaks, right? If you have way more kayaks, you have a lot more problems than, oh no, your LDL looks good. I'd much rather a high LDL with 2 yachts than decent LDL with a ton of kayaks.
So what number are you looking at for
it's LDL particle size.
LDL particle size, and that's not a test that would have been done
asked
to
for
me.
it. You have to ask. That's right. Okay. So it's called a NMR profile. So if you ask your physician, hey, can we run an NMR profile? They'll run it, but they're not going to run it because insurance, again, back to the healthcare system, they don't reimburse for that.
We're fortunate because we have good insurance. So we get Elizabeth and I both get a couple blood tests a year where we go in and get our blood work done or whatever, and it doesn't cost us anything at all. And so that's super nice. But understanding the numbers is still, I've got to depend on the doctor to tell me the numbers. And most of the time, like last year, my testosterone was high. And so they ran a secondary test, and she was like, you just have naturally high testosterone. It's nothing to worry about. You don't have any problems.
Your free testosterone or your total?
My free testosterone was
nice.
high.
Yeah.
So, and I was pleasantly surprised.
It's a great problem to have.
32 years old and my free testosterone is high. So yeah, I was like, okay, cool, I'll take it. And then this year, I went and I did blood work, and they didn't run the testosterone test for some reason. I need to figure that out why they didn't do that. But but she said, yeah, your cholesterol is just a little bit high. And she didn't seem too concerned about it, but just said, take some fish oil, stop eating red meat so much. And I think, and you can correct me if you think this is a incorrect assumption, but I think we could all eat a little bit less red meat.
Yeah.
I probably do eat way too much red meat, so cutting back on the red meat is probably not a bad idea in general.
Yeah, it just depends.
Especially if you're eating, like you shouldn't be eating red meat at every meal.
Right.
But excess of anything is not a good thing.
Correct.
Right.
And
that's kind of like, that's kind of one of the things that I've followed. Yeah. People ask me all the time, like, what kind of diet do you follow? And I'm like, I don't follow a diet because diets are temporary. And I just like to, be consistent and try to like be balanced. And so, I look at the menu and whatever's the healthiest thing on the menu, I get like one level of unhealthier than that because I'm like the healthiest thing on the menu. I'm just going to get burnt out on eating the healthiest thing every single time. And I'm going to crash and go eat donuts or something. And so I'm like, I'm not going to eat what I want to eat, which is like the most unhealthy thing on the menu, or even like 2 steps from that. I'll just like be in the middle to more healthy range.
Right. But you also, your goal is you want to be better. And
yeah.
So if you were like, man, Tyler, I want to be better. Okay. Yeah. How so? Because it has to be measurable.
Right.
Right. We have to look at all those things. You all hear set SMART goals. Right.
Right.
But the other thing is we're not children. Right. So we have other people that are like, well, so-and-so can eat this all the time and they don't have any issues. And I'm like, why are we talking about other people? Like, what? Let's talk about you. This is about you. But the other thing too is, you do have, as far as like endurance athletes, like any athletes listening to this, you cannot. So take like Rich Froning, right? So wins the CrossFit Games 3 years in a row. I mean, the dude's just a specimen, right? Well, the paleo community early on sent in cameras and all this stuff for people to like follow him. And this dude's eating like Pop-Tarts and like toaster strudels. And they're like, whoa. And he's like, guys, if you think I can compete at this level, eating broccoli and chicken and sweet potatoes, he's like, y'all are crazy.
You lost your mind.
Well, that's the whole difference, right? So people are like, yeah, but so-and-so eats this. I'm like, are you winning the most fit games 3 years in a row? Or are you just showing up and sitting in front of your laptop for 8 hours a day?
Yeah.
2 completely different things. But that's why I was telling you the stimulus is, what is your training? Well, I cycle. No. That's what we were just talking about, right? So it's like, oh, you cycle? I ride my bike, yes, for exercise, but we have a different definition of that.
My niece cycles.
Okay, that's like bears at the circus
6.
cycle. But you know what I'm talking about. But people say, well, no, I'm a runner.
Yeah.
Tell me more. How many miles? At what pace?
Yeah.
Like, let's look at all that stuff. My heart rate, if I'm just jogging, there's no, recovery pace. Oh, I did a recovery run. So I get some people that they do run and they're like, hey, today's my day off. I did a recovery run. I'm like, bro, you're 210 pounds. There's no recovery run.
Anytime you go past walking, you're at like sub-threshold.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I will cross threshold. So like, even if I'm running a 9.5-minute mile, like I will cross threshold. Like it's not.
You
no.
will.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying. That's the difference though. It's not most people. Like you have people that actually run marathons and do Ironman, and they can run. Oh, I just have a 10-mile, 8-minute pace.
Yeah.
And they will stay well below threshold.
Right.
Because most endurance athletes that are doing this for a living, their threshold and their max VO2 are like flirting with one another.
Right.
And not like the normal person like me that it's halfway. Like literally if I cross, 125 beats per minute, I'm over. Like it's just not, it's not going to happen for me. That's why I stuck in the sprint, triathlon. I'm not doing long distance. But it's just one of those nuances that I don't like, like so-and-so, this athlete is eating this diet. And, Lacey and I tell all of our clients, like, we're diet agnostic. Like, there is no diet that is best. It depends on the problem and it depends on your goals.
Yeah.
That's it.
And you gotta like, it requires some experimentation. Is that fair to say that you have to like experiment with your diet? Like that's what you and I did when you were trying to help me lose weight. You were like, at one point I got really, really lean and I was going on like 80-mile bike rides with no food in my stomach. And that's what you told me to do. But then I was starting to like struggle with that. And you were like, okay, this is not going to work for you anymore. You need at least a couple blackberries in the morning.
Yeah, you got to eat something.
And all my friends were like, dude, are you for real right now? We're about to ride the bike 80 miles and all you're going to have is a cup of blackberries. But actually that cup of blackberries, that would get me through it. That was enough.
Did I send you any research that showed a couple of blackberries is going to work?
No, I just trusted you. I was like,
well, I didn't know, but hey, this has worked before.
Try it.
Let's see.
Yeah,
That's right.
Let's try it.
Well, most people don't want that. Most people don't want to try and see, well, let's see what's going to work for you.
Yeah.
But that's why I work with people for 30 days. So if somebody calls and they're like, hey, I think if you give me like a diet and an exercise program, I mean, that's really all I need. I'm like, well, you just go Google that and follow it. And then call me in 30 days. Once you've followed it for 30 days, call me and see if you've improved. And they always improve because they all work.
Yeah.
Right. Now, look, I'm not going to sit here and say that somebody has, plantar fasciitis, that I can tell you what type of shoe that's going to work for you and that, how to, heel strike or midfoot. Like, I'm not going to sit here and act like I know anything about that. But when it comes to the majority of people, that when you're just questioning how they're doing things, that's it. Like, I've never told you I knew, I know exactly what's going to work for you because I don't.
Let's try it.
I know enough to be dangerous and ask you some questions, but I know what to look for too. Just let's assess and see what's going on.
So like when we, when you helped me lose some weight, we were just trying to mostly cannibalize muscle, but I did lose some fat as well. I I probably was at 8% body fat, and I quickly got down to 5 or 6.
That's right.
And I didn't really look good according to Elizabeth, so she didn't like it, but I was fast, so I didn't care. I was like, I don't really care what I look like. I just want to go faster.
Perform, yeah.
But the fasted training was a huge element of that. Like we did, I think it was about a month and a half of fasted training, which meant I would wake up in the morning, not eat food, drink coffee, and get on the bike. And almost all of that training was at a slow pace.
Yeah, sub-threshold.
Sub-threshold for sure. Zone 2 and a little bit of zone 3. But as my body fat got even lower, hanging out in zone 3 became difficult. And then actually it became easier later on once my body got more fat adapted. But is that, fasted training is something people ask me about a lot. And I'm always hesitant to say, you should try it because I don't know, but I guess what I'm asking is that something that anybody can try, or is it highly dependent on their body type?
Yeah, it's always highly dependent, but it's not. I wouldn't say anybody. But keep in mind, high-end athletes. I mean, that's why people can run. These professional marathoners. They are not burning carbs the entire marathon, right? You would run out like that. Literally, why you train is to become more efficient with fat utilization. Right. That's what happens. It always happens.
Your body can only store how many calories worth of carbohydrates?
So I think it's 2,500 to
2,500. 2,500. And when you're riding a bike, for instance, at a high pace or at a moderate pace, you're burning around 700 calories an hour or something like that. Maybe your runners are burning around 500 or 600 calories an hour, and I think swimmers might be a little bit less. But it's pretty easy to see that 2,500 calories of storage is not enough.
Right. That's when you hear bulk. I mean, most of the people that
and you also can't eat enough.
Correct. Because you can't process it.
Right.
So there's a lot of things happening. So if you bulk, right, quote unquote bulk, that means that you have depleted your glycogen storage, and glycogen is the storage form of carbohydrate in the liver and the muscles. Okay. So technically, the amount of muscle mass, genetically, how you refill it, you can hold a little bit more, or less than the average person, but it's not enough to complete an Ironman or a marathon, right? So you have to train.
Or a 100-mile run.
That's right. You have to train the body to become more efficient with fat, right? But the other thing is, how fast are you doing it? So I could go walk all day, or just spin on my bike all day without food because it's low enough that I'm not going to tap in to my glycogen storage, right?
Right.
The other thing that is going on, triangulating the problem, is when you are training at a very high pace, high intensity, you are shunting blood away from the GI tract. That is why people throw up, right? That's when people eat too much and they get sick and throw up, it's because you've shunted away all of that blood to your extremities so they can perform, and you do not have a lot of blood flow going to the gut. So digestion stalls.
Huh.
That's the issue. That's why people go do the race.
Yeah.
And then they eat all that stuff. And then, say 2 hours later, whenever they've calmed down, more parasympathetic. So when you're running that fast, that's sympathetic. So you're getting on stage to speak, right? You're doing anything that you're nervous about. That's why people will throw up. That's why they have diarrhea. That's why, because their GI system just shuts down because it's noticing as a threat, right? Well, you fill your stomach with all those goo gels and whatever else during those rides. After you're done with the race, people just spend the whole time, in the portalette, because that's what happens. You're basically shutting it down, and then you're filling it up with all this sugar and crap, and then it's coming right out. So you have to pay attention. That's why some people can eat certain foods on the bike or running, and some people can't, because it depends on the intensity. It depends on what you're used to, right? So you're saying fasted training, that depends. What's your goal?
Yeah.
Right? And then what have you tried before? And then we can work into that, because you
Yeah.
can do, you can do like MCT or like heavy whipping cream or something like that in your coffee just to get some, fats and calories. You don't have to just go water and, black coffee.
Yeah.
But like I said, it depends on your goal. The joke that most of my guys know whenever, they refer someone to me, that I have a lot of busy business owners that are like, hey, I or say it's an athlete.
Don't have time to eat.
Well, yeah, I want to lose body fat. I want to get stronger. I want to get faster. I don't really care about all that health crap. I just want to get better. And my response is, well, great.
Right.
Just take steroids and do cocaine, because you'll have both. You'll have both. You'll have laser focus, right? You'll have strength. And they're like, no, that's not what I mean.
No
That's
health whatsoever.
That's exactly what you're telling me, is that you don't want to do this for the long haul.
Right.
So what's the goal? You're in this for life. I mean,
Right.
it's not, oh, no, guys, I do this because I have to and I get paid to do it. You're in it for life. So for you, you're just looking for every little edge, but now you're shaving the blade. So most of the people that either come through what I do, I know right off the bat if they're filling out the questionnaire, if they're shaving their blade to make it sharper, or we're just hammering steel. They are just dumb iron and we're hammering it where, hey, let's look at what you're eating. I probably wouldn't eat that. Let's remove that. But these higher end athletes or whatever else, I mean, you're dealing with a whole different animal.
Yeah. One of the things that I notice now after having done that with you and having gone through all that fasted training is I don't need to eat as much.
No, we're right.
It totally like, and I have a few friends that I like go into the mountains with who like kind of don't eat that much or whatever. But I have some friends that like we go into the mountains and they're like they bring like a sandwich and like 5 bars and I've got like 1 bar for like 13 hours of like
That's right.
running and climbing and shit. And they're like, dude, that's all you brought to eat? And I'm like, I don't really need to eat that much. And, maybe it's because I'm a little bit fatter, but...
no, but it's not, I mean, that's not your first rodeo either, Like, if I'm going climb with you, I know better. I'm not going to be like, oh, no, I'm fat adapted, I'm keto, I'm going to go climb the mountain. Hell no.
Yeah.
Like, that's just not something I'm used to. But even when you started doing the fasted rides, you weren't doing intervals.
No.
You're not doing these hard intervals that like you're crushing it. And that's where people are like, well, no, you can tap into more fat and all this stuff. I'm like, guys, when you start applying research, so like the whole thing with VO2 threshold, if I just stay below threshold all the time, I'll be burning, 80% fat, right? And you talk to them in 6 months, how's that working for you? Are you ripped?
Yeah.
Right? Your body adapts to that. So like if you're just going, traditional jogger, right? I want to go jog 3 miles. If you jog 3 miles at say a 9-minute pace, that first week, if you've never jogged before, it's going to be hard. You may not finish. Finally, you're going to get to where you're finishing. Then you're going to get to where, man, this is good. I can do this easy. And then at some point, your body's trying the whole time get you there from A to B the most efficient way possible. Well, that's what it does. So it burns less calories. That's right. That's right.
Okay, so the more fit you are, the fewer calories you're burning. Is that what you're saying?
Well, no, you may burn more calories, but they're more percent of fat.
Oh, okay. Yeah, the more efficient your body gets, the more fat it burns instead of glycogen.
Correct.
Got it.
Okay. Now, if we're talking about endurance,
is that regardless of how much you eat before, or if you carb load before every workout, is your body going to continue burning mostly carbs?
Man, I don't know if they've actually proven that. So technically, what you're talking about is if you flip that switch and then raise insulin levels right before you train, your body's going to want. I mean, it's going to have to keep. Either that insulin's going to dispose of the glucose, or your intensity is going to be so high that it's going to start dumping glucose anyway out of the liver, right? So we're talking subtle right now, right? What you're talking about.
Yeah.
But once you're trained, and even if you have enough carbs, so I'm a big proponent of carb backloading, which would be after your intervals or after you strength train, you eat the carbs, right? So we can go down that path of why that's more effective, but you will. Your muscles are, preferentially will absorb more of the glucose because of the glucose, transporters are basically they're waiting there to pull it from the muscles you just trained. Yeah. If you just eat all that sugar, say in the morning, like most people eat for breakfast, you don't have that. So your body fat and your muscles, insulin is going to treat both of them the same. That's not how it does after you train. So when you're talking about is if you just went, hey, Mark, I'm going to race you for a 10K. You're going to wake up, you're not going to eat anything, and I'm going to eat exactly what my genetic test and these scientists told me to eat. You could still beat me because for a 10K, you have enough glycogen on board in your muscles and your liver that you'll dump it all out, you'll use it, and you'll get to the finish line not having eaten a thing but water.
Yeah.
Most people can't do that, right? So you're talking. There's a lot more things you have to look at, but it's not. Well, this athlete does it. Why can't I?
Yeah. Well, and I also have friends that are like, I would consider them very well trained athletes, but they seem to be more dependent on food during activity. Like we go on like a long ski tour for a day and they'll eat 2, maybe 3 times more than I do. And they like almost like are always wanting to eat more food. And even though they're highly trained, does that mean they're less fat adapted?
No, I mean it may just have to do with the type of their. Are they climbers? Like, are they doing that activity? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, they do it like that. That's what they do. Like they're ski touring all the time and stuff like that. But they feel like they need more food,
And they may
because they haven't trained to not need it. I guess I don't know.
It depends. It depends. Yeah. But if you said you didn't have food, would they have to stop?
I don't know.
Try it.
Well, that's usually what I say. That's usually what I say. I'm like, dude, people have gone days without food because we go on like a 2-hour climb and they like want to bring all this food, and I'm like, I don't know.
Well, you may think too. I mean, placebo is powerful,
super powerful,
right? So if in their mind, if they think that this is going to work for them, I would say, okay, do it. Right? It's not like no. Science says no. If you think that's going to work, do it.
Yeah.
And it often does. So it's not. I mean, that's why I tell you, like, what are we talking about? Those guys, they're trying to lose weight. No, they're just enjoying. Climbing.
Well, one of the benefits about being less dependent on food is you don't have to carry it.
Well, right. You don't have to get your wife to bring it. I kill myself laughing at your wife's story.
That story.
That's so funny.
Yeah. That was a rough day.
Yeah, that was so funny.
That was a rough day, and she pulled through, but I didn't end up even getting to that food. So
oh man,
that's for a different stories for a different day. But essentially, what happened was I misjudged for those of you at home who are listening, I attempted a long ridge link up in the mountains and got some heat exhaustion up on the ridge and had to self-evac off the ridge kind of. It was kind of a wild experience, but, it was a learning experience at the same time, because I found myself on the ridge with very little fresh water, experiencing heat exhaustion symptoms, and I knew it was heat exhaustion symptoms because I've had those before. And so I vomited a few times, my vision got blurry, I got cold and dizzy. And I was like, all right,
Probably shouldn't climb this mountain.
I've met this person before. No, what happened was I'd been doing all my training early in the morning and up in the Tetons where it's nice and cool. Like I'm talking like 3 a.m. starts. And then I started this at like 1 p.m. and it starts with a 7,000 foot climb. And so I exerted myself pretty hard for, 3 hours and then got up on the ridge, felt fine. And I don't know, an hour later, started experiencing the symptoms. Didn't have much fresh water. Most of my water had caffeine in it. And I was like, well, this is useless. I can't drink caffeine during, heat exhaustion. So I dumped that. Called Elizabeth, told her, hey, look, I've got to get off of this ridge and bail. There's no trail, so I'm going to have to like meander my way off the ridge down to this like lake where I knew there was a trail at the lake. And so basically I spent the next 2 hours slowly down climbing through scree, looking for snow to put in my water bottle to mix with the little bit of fresh water that I did have to melt more water, and taking 2-minute timed naps. So like I'd move for like 15 minutes, lay in the rocks, set a timer for 2 minutes, close my eyes, recover, drink some of the melted snow that also had dirt and grass in it, and then continue moving. And I just repeated that until I eventually found a stream that was maybe like, 6 inches wide, and I started drinking water. And then, eventually got down to the lake. There was a fisherman. He had a bunch of water. He gave me a bunch of water. I set a 10-minute timer, took a 10-minute nap by the lake, thanked him for the water, got up, started hiking down the trail that Elizabeth was hiking up. I had told her to start hiking up the trail with water for me. And I got about 50 meters away from this guy and vomited everything that I had between the ridge and the lake. All the grass and dirt that was mixed in with the snow, all the water this guy gave me, just vomited it all. So then I just took off running. I just ran down the trail as hard as I could.
Good.
Got out of there, got home, ate a couple of Chick-fil-A sandwiches, and
but keep in mind,
shook and went to bed. So it was a rough day. But
that's what I'm saying. Keep in mind. So we're talking about no one was paying you to do that. right?
Right,
Like
right.
you weren't racing. Like
Right.
you did that
Yeah.
on your own.
Yeah.
So what we're talking about is you have some people that are just looking to get healthy.
Yeah.
You know, whatever it is. So you see the difference in,
Yeah.
you know, someone that, well, no, I vomited, I did all this stuff. And most people are just like, man, I hope I can get on the treadmill for 45 minutes.
Right.
So
Right.
whole different ball game.
It is a different ball game, and astonishingly, that like I moved to Utah 3 years ago, and the first thing I noticed is, holy moly, there are a lot of people on an extremely high level here
Right.
that aren't paid to do sport. Like these are like really highly trained athletes that are just. I mean, I hate to use the term weekend warrior, but these are just recreational athletes that are
Legit.
borderline
Yeah.
professionals
Right.
at what they do, but like just doing it, silent. I call them dragons. They're just like, because you hear about them, but you don't see them that much because
Right.
they're so fast and they're so high up there and stuff like that. But they're just like doing their thing with nobody watching, not like getting paid to do it, but just like getting after it, man, and truly experiencing life, which is like the appeal for me now. Like I'm not racing bikes anymore. I just want to experience more life. And if I've got 5 hours to go and run up a mountain, I want to do as much as I can in that 5 hours. If
Right.
I'm faster, I can do more. And,
You feel better.
bigger objectives become smaller when I get stronger. And then that's the motivation now for me with all of my like performance aspirations. Is like I want to do more in less time and experience more of the world.
And that's the difference between, that's when I tell people, if I'm gonna ask them, the questionnaire piece of it is, where are you?
Yeah.
And I'm gonna meet you there. So it's not, oh, bro, you got a ways to go. You need to be, taking 2-minute naps on the side of a mountain. Like, so most people are just, it depends on where they are. But like for you, that's what I'm saying. You go to Utah, that whole demographic is a lot different than South Louisiana.
Right, right,
So
right.
you have gyms down here. I'm not GY. I'm talking about GE.
Yeah.
Like these gyms down here, that these people that they are just go getters, right? And
Yeah.
so type A's that you're saying, hey, you can probably do less if you just do it smarter. Like you can basically do this a lot longer. But you have people that 250 pounds that are trying to just run because they think a marathon means that they're healthy. Right, so they destroy their knees, they destroy their hips, and then if you tell people, hey, if you ran your cardiac enzyme, so if you have a heart attack, right, or you think you have a heart attack, you go into the ER, they're running cardiac enzymes. They want to make sure that, hey, is there any damage to the cardiac tissue? So they have 3 markers that are that specifically, usually for cardiovascular damage. If you ran the blood work of somebody that just finished a marathon, and I said, hey, this is a marathoner, and this one is a heart attack patient, tell me the difference. Most physicians would have a hard time telling you the difference.
Wow.
And so people think, well, they're in shape, they're healthy. It's like, no, that's not always the case. So that's what we're talking about. Most of these higher end athletes, some of them are doing it right? But when you start getting paid, like these Ironman, that's why they can't compete at that level, right? CrossFit, you don't have people that are champion, like Rich Froning was anomaly, right?
Yeah.
Like you can't compete at this. Hey, I'm gonna join at 20 and I'm gonna compete till I'm 40. You'll beat your body up and deplete your reserves.
There's a point at which all the exercise becomes unhealthy.
Correct.
That's what you're saying.
Correct.
Yeah.
That's it.
And the maybe the fitness and longevity are inversely related at some point.
Yes.
To a certain extent. Like you can only seek performance to a certain level before it starts hurting the longevity.
Right. Well, it's the same as bodybuilding, right?
Right.
People can step on stage for one day, right? And some of these people are pretty shredded. But
Yeah.
if they do this, they bulk up, then they shred down, and then they do all their photo shoots, right? And not knocking them. I mean, that shit's hard. Like I've never stepped on stage, but I've done the diet, and it takes a ton of commitment.
Yeah.
Right. But I'm gonna celebrate the person that lost 50 pounds, lost 100 pounds, maintained it, got stronger, dabbled in a different sport, but they're consistent. So I'm a basically champion that person and congratulate that person, not the person who, did a photo shoot and then like, hey,
Gained all the weight.
yeah, or just couldn't maintain it. Did a diet, New Year's resolution. I mean, we always laugh about that. So like New Year's, sometimes I don't even take new clients. Like people are like, hey, I really want to get healthy. I'm like, call me in February.
Yeah. New Year's resolutions are such a joke.
Well, that's
it's
what I'm
like, what is it? I mean, New Year's is like the world's biggest non-event. Nothing happens, but for some reason, everybody decides they're different.
It's the same as Monday.
Like,
I'll start Monday. Why? Start tomorrow.
Why on Monday?
Start on Friday. Like, what are we talking about?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the start on Monday thing comes from like all the distractions on the weekend, because it seems to be a pretty consistent thing that like people are more distracted on the weekend. I seem to be the opposite. I'm more distracted on Monday, but
right. But I would prefer. So my wife always gets mad at me because I'll tell the kids, I'm like, thank God it's Monday. Like, oh, it's Monday, kids, and I'm pumped because I love what I do. And I mean, I've had to make choices. I didn't always love what I did. You either.
Yeah.
But I'm pumped. Like sometimes it's like, oh, Sunday, it's just slower. We're just kind of hanging around, and that is not in my
Monday's
DNA.
the best day of the week, in my opinion. It is sort of like your chance to get out there and crush it again, because like you're not working and then you are. But and I enjoy going back to work every Monday. But Monday tends to be my rest day. Because I trash myself on Sunday, Saturday, and Sunday.
Yeah,
so
but not with alcohol and muffins, right?
No.
You're climbing mountains, you know what I'm saying?
With mountains and muffins.
Yeah, but that's a different thing. That's you're saying trashing yourself. Like most people are just, oh man, it's been a long week and we got a couple parties, and look, that's fine. But what you can't do is talk out both sides of your mouth. Where it's like, no, I really do want to get healthier. I'm like, guys, this is all a choice. All a choice. Right. It's not habit, and that's the biggest thing. I just don't have the right habits. I'm like, guys, whenever you're brushing your teeth, like when you grab it with your right hand, that's a habit. Whenever you like press where, your email or your Facebook app is on your phone and it's not there, that's habit. Like when you just click it, or you go to pull your shift. So like if I get in my wife's car, like mine is here and if hers is here and I do this and there's nothing there, that's true habit, right? Not, oh no, you exercise because you have a good habit. I'm like, guys, that's still a choice. Like the foods we eat, that's a choice. Like, but whenever you mix that up and you tell people, well, no, it's choice, people get frustrated.
The other thing I think is important that a lot of people don't take into account is it also is highly dependent on your environment.
Okay,
and so what I mean by that is like we don't really keep food in our house, and that's by choice. If there's food in my house and I know about it, I'm gonna eat it.
Right.
It's inevitable, and so you won't find cookies in our house. And I say you won't find cookies in our house only because Elizabeth's good at hiding them. But she's a good sport about it. She knows now if she's gonna buy candy or cookies, she has to hide it. Don't tell me where it is, because I have no control, none. I mean, I have control, but like if there's food and I know about it, I'm gonna eat it. Especially if I'm like bored or if I'm like editing photos or video. Like that's like a kind of a mundane thing, and just like snacking on something's easy. You know what I mean? So I try to just avoid the situation entirely. And that's how I have found success in getting my nutrition under control, is by completely avoiding putting myself into situations.
Right.
Like if I can control what restaurant we're going to go to somewhere that doesn't have like a really good menu item that I love that isn't good for me, because I'm going to want to order that. Like I'm not.
Right, but if it killed you immediately when you ate it, you wouldn't.
Right.
Same as smoking, same as drinking, right? So most people, if you tell them, well, smoking, people that smoke, well, I want to quit. I'm like, well, we know that is taking years off your life. I mean, all this other stuff that we hear about, all these preservatives and crap that people want to talk about that are, carcinogens, right? We know that cigarette smoke, like, increases the risk of lung cancer by like 20-something%. Like that is the highest of anything else. Yeah. And people still choose to do it.
It's mind blowing.
Well, but
I can't believe it's still a thing.
Well, that's what I'm trying to tell you. Like even like the mask mandate. Like guys are like, why don't we just mandate no cigarettes during COVID? Like watch how fast that would go away. But you really think about how we pander to a lot of our conveniences and choices. Like even alcohol. Like don't get me wrong. If you look at most type A super stressed people, that's why they say one drink a day is usually correlated with improved health outcomes, right? One, it's a stressor. So if you're not doing any exercise and you're drinking, that is stressing the liver, and it's hormesis, right? So a little bit will make you stronger, but too much of it will kill you. Yeah. Right. So that's one thing. But it's the people that say, no, wine is healthy, or like resveratrol is healthy in grapes. I'm like, guys, that's not.
Resveratrol might be healthy, but I don't think you need to get it from wine, right?
Correct. They have supplements for that.
Yeah.
But that's if you really listen. So I mean, you've been doing, like for me and Lacey, like we do this all the time. That when you find out pretty quick that for coaching, the phrase is you either make possible what's necessary or make necessary what's possible.
Right.
And that's the only two ways to go about it, right? Yeah. So you find out, like for you have a lot of necessity, internal. There's no external like needed. I don't have to tell you, hey, I'm going to fire you. I'm going to, give you a bunch of money. I'm going to take a bunch of money. You're just motivated. Like that internally you have the necessity. So now it's just a possibility. Most of the people I work with is let's find out what's possible, right? And if I can help, I want to. If I can't, I'm going to tell you, I don't think I can help. But when you get to, hey, it's possible, you know what you need to do, and you just need to provide necessity, you think about how difficult that could be for a quote unquote coach, right?
But even for the motivated athlete, though, there's a lot of misinformation out there.
Well, yeah.
And it's hard to navigate that, especially with it all being at our fingertips. Like it's
that's input, right? So if you're actually looking at the right output, you start to realize, okay, if I change this, what am I measuring? That's why I told you, where do you want to go? Because someone wanting to run, a sub 230 marathon is a whole different ball game than, hey, I need to lower my cholesterol. Right. So it's two different things, but what's the output, right? So input is, I'm going to give you the input and I'm going to see what you're already doing. So let me just see what you're doing. And then let's tweak a few things along the way. Let's see how you feel. And then when in time, we're going to run. I mean, I couldn't run your cholesterol measurements every day. I mean, I guess I could, but that's not the best use of time and money, right? But hey, in 3 months, keep doing this. And then let's see. And if they've improved, what do we know?
Yeah.
So that's the point where you give people the answers and the choices, and then now let's move forward.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess for an athlete who's like already highly trained and looking to get better, like where do they start? I mean, if they've got a coach and they've got, they think they have their diet figured out, but they're trying to squeeze more out of the tank, where do they start?
I mean, high-end athletes, it's what's the goal, right?
Yeah.
So if you're looking for what you want to gain an extra minute, like remember you're sharpening a blade,
right?
So now the smallest things matter, right? So you could change, say, a cyclist, the position of their cleat, and get how much more wattage, output, because that's the dynamics of how they're pressing, on the pedal. So
right.
But it's also you'll have different athletes that change coaches and level up. Like I'll tell you, I can't work with like an Olympian and be like, hey, I got bronze last year and I hear you're going to help me get gold. I tell you, I'm all for it. Let's do it. But I'm not going to guarantee that I can do that. But it depends. If they're drinking, then I would say, are you measuring your sleep? And let's see it.
What's your take on supplements?
Some of them are pretty legit. I mean, fish oil. Most people don't eat enough. Don't eat enough fish. I mean, when I run a cardiovascular panel, I run what we talked about. The LDL particles and inflammatory markers. But then I run an omega index, and so that's measuring omega-6 to omega-3 ratios.
Okay.
And most people. So if you look at any of like your, restaurant oils, right? Anything that's packaged on a shelf, like it has a bunch of omega-6. It's not including just grain-fed beef, right? So if you were telling me, hey, should I eat grass-fed or grain-fed beef? Now we have to look at omega index to see for you if you're responding poorly or whatever. But most people have a terrible omega-6 ratio.
And omega-6 is bad.
No, it's not bad. No, it is an essential fatty acid. Okay. It's the ratio.
It's the ratio of omega-3 to omega-6.
That's right. So if you have low omega-3, high omega-6, that's usually not good for inflammation.
Okay.
So increasing your omega-3s and being conscious of where your omega-6s are coming from is one thing. But most people just do not have enough omega-3. So any of their ratios, when I look at it, most often it's skewed because of low EPA or DHA. So taking a good fish oil supplement is one of them.
You mentioned the word good.
True.
That caught my ear because that bothers me a little bit. It's the supplement industry is so unregulated that you don't know if what's in the bottle is what's on the label.
That's right.
How do you know?
Well, certain companies, for now, are their brand promise and what the labs show. So there's a company, I forgot the name of it. I think
they're a good third party, like verification.
But they take it off the shelf. I'm going to send you my product.
They don't get a private sample.
Correct.
Because that's tricky too. Because I was wondering about that. There are these third-party verification companies, but they're getting like a special bottle.
Yeah, and their pockets are lined, right? So it's the same as research, which is why it's so shitty right now, is because if you have companies that are paying for the research and the researchers don't send them the right, results, then they're going to get defunded. That's a problem, right? But this other company, I think it's like Labdoor or something.
Okay.
Essentially,
we'll put it in the comments.
I can find it
in the caption. We'll find the website and put it in the caption of the podcast. But there is a qualified third party verification company that will
that basically measure if what they say is in it. So they're looking at amounts, they're looking at the quality, but they do have some, like fish oil is one. Like I've had clients that are like, no, I'm taking fish oil, and they send me like the Walgreens or CVS, which is cheaper, and it's worse. I mean, it's like the quality of the oil in there is already like rancid, right? So they're just taking shitty oil that is making their particle counts worse, inflammation worse. I mean, there's not a lot of omega-3.
God.
So that's context, right? So that's one of them. Fish oil is one. Vitamin D is another one. I mean, most people are deficient. That if you could just take,
almost everybody's vitamin D deficient. And that's actually something that I don't know if they ever proved it or whatever, but they were trying to correlate severe COVID illness with vitamin D deficiency. Did they prove that?
We're going to say tongue in cheek.
Correlation doesn't equal causation, and I think it was mostly a correlation study.
It was highly correlated.
Highly correlated.
Yeah, a lot of those smaller.
Even with like 94% of Americans being vitamin D deficient.
Yeah. Like that was something. Now it was small trials that they did, but that's what the naysayers were saying. Oh, it was only 30 people. I don't care how many people it is. If they looked at vitamin D and people that were higher, what was it, like 21 or like 22 nanograms per deciliter, whatever it was, had no deaths and only 2 in ICU. And then the ones that were below that had like 8 or 10 in ICU and like 2 or 3 deaths. I'm going to start to question that, right? So I'm going to say, well, it may have something to do with it. It's not vitamin D. It's what vitamin D does for the body, right? What it does for the hormones, the immune system, recovery, like all that stuff, right? It's not even a vitamin. It's a hormone, right? So that's that's the type of thing that's like, look, guys, naysayers will be like, oh, well, so-and-so has, if you're talking about one-off people that have low vitamin D but are still healthy, then the question is always, well, could they be better, with higher? But given what I've seen, I'm not going to say the higher the better, because you have some people that just take like 25,000 IUs a day, which is not good. I mean, you don't
like a lot.
It is. I mean, you could take it now. I'll tell you, if you start to get like a cold, or like if I found out that I tested for COVID,
5,000 IUs a day. Does that sound right?
Well, yeah, but you're taking your just to keep your levels, 30 to 50.
I'm not trying to build my levels.
Well, yeah, but it's also your system's not utilizing those levels. So it's the same for vitamin C. So you flying home, whenever you fly home, if I were to tell you to take, let's just say 6,000 milligrams of vitamin C today, right now, drink it. Like in 30 minutes, more than likely, you're going to be running to the bathroom, right? Because it's going to go right through you.
I'd also have a headache, right?
Not a headache. It would pass through. You'd have diarrhea. Yeah. That is the self-regulating, right?
Okay.
But if you took it the day you flew home, whenever you fly back home to Utah, take the same amount after getting off that plane, I bet you don't have diarrhea. And it's because of the stress factor of flying, travel.
Really?
Yeah. So when your immune system's stressed, you can take more vitamin C. That's why you can, but we're talking orally, right? So if you're getting like a vitamin C IV, like you can go super high.
That's totally different.
Yeah, that's completely different. But orally, it's the same for magnesium and vitamin C. So when people say, how much should I take? Let's see, and it depends. So if you're getting sick, like that, like say if my kids were sick, they had a cold, and I started to get it, I could take way more vitamin C, right? As opposed to, I took an emergency pack. I'm like, guys, that's 1,000 milligrams. That's great. It's not hurting you. It's just not doing, you're spraying a bonfire with water at that point, right? So I would say, I mean, as far as supplements, fish oil is good. Magnesium is good. Vitamin D is good.
Now, vitamin D, before we get off of that topic, vitamin D is also fat soluble.
Correct. You have to take it with a meal.
Yeah, if you don't take vitamin D with fats, if you take vitamin D with a pack of Skittles, there's just a bunch of sugar in Skittles, and if you drink water, then like you're basically not, your body won't absorb the vitamin
as
D.
effectively.
So it's actually there are vitamin D supplements that have a little bit of oil in them for the fats. Is that enough?
I would say no. I always suggest taking vitamin D with a meal.
Okay.
Because it's not that if you take it before an event, it's going to make you superhuman. I mean, that's not what we're talking about. It's not like a pre-workout.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So taking it with your first meal of the day, or if you only have it, say the only meal you eat is at dinner, I always tell people, guys, just take it at dinner. This isn't rocket science,
So if you're drinking skim milk, are you absorbing any of the vitamin D in the milk?
Don't drink skim milk. That's the rule. Don't drink. If you knew how that was made, you wouldn't drink it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's like shot through this hot screen. Basically, the powder is all that's left on it, and then they mix it with water.
What?
Yeah, it's
I grew up drinking skim milk.
Oh, no. Now, when people say dairy's bad, I'll tell you, if you could like milk a cow and drink that, and you don't have issues from having a lactase enzyme,
Raw.
dude, that's some good stuff.
Raw dairy?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's some good stuff.
It's completely different.
Yeah, you can't buy it because, of course, it's illegal.
I think you can buy it in
Some
Utah
places.
in some places.
Some
You have to be like, I think you have to be part of. It's like a club.
That's right. Yeah.
It's like the Dallas
cult.
It's like the Dallas Buyers Club, where you can be part of a club and get free vitamin D and pay. Free raw milk and pay for the club membership.
That's right.
You can't actually buy the. Why is it illegal?
Why is it illegal in America with healthcare? Because if you're not, so milk you buy is pasteurized,
Right.
Which means it's heated enough to kill the bacteria in it.
Yeah.
Technically, though, I don't know how many people get sick off of raw milk. The people that I know drink it don't get sick. So
Okay.
what's that tell you? It's kind of like the same as probiotics, the microbiome.
Is it because that a long time ago it was impossible to store milk properly in a refrigerator, and the bacteria that grew in it was really bad and
No.
it got people sick?
I don't know. Technically, I know people that leave the milk and scrape the cream off the top, and that's what they make butter with. That's like back in the day. It wasn't like you had to. Yeah, you wouldn't have to refrigerate. Look, I don't know that science. I can tell you that the reason they have to pasteurize it is FDA. Like you can't just sell, right? Those subtle things. You have to follow. That's why it's not legal to sell.
Everyone listening, get a cow.
Yes.
If you want milk,
milk it.
get a cow. Okay. It's the best way to get milk.
It is. It is what it is. But they have farms that do it. But you can't. You're not just gonna buy it, randomly. Like you have to know the farmer, and you can go get it. But that's good stuff. If you, from a recovery perspective, or like when you're sick, or just the colostrum, from it, go for it. But yeah, if you're saying no, I drink skim milk, I don't drink whole milk, I'm like, don't do that. If you're gonna drink milk, drink whole milk.
Just go for it.
Yeah, just go for it. Yeah.
Well, look, dude, thanks so much. I really appreciate you doing this. I think we should do it again at some point because there's obviously more inside of that brain that we can get out.
Oh, it's always fun.
And I think there are a lot of people at home that aren't professional athletes, but they just want to get more out of life. And that's what I want. I'm out there training all the time, and it's not because I'm competing at anything. I haven't raced in 4 years now. I'm just out there racing the clock. I'm trying to race the sun. You know what I mean? I got a limited amount of time between, work and when I got to actually go to bed and get stuff done to play outside. So the faster I can go, the more I can play. And that's what I'm chasing. So having information like this is super helpful because there's so much out there and you never know.
Yeah. And I don't know everything. And some of the stuff I'm skeptical always, but it's just, this is my, you're, rolling down mountains and vomiting and I'm over here just reading the research, I'm listening to other experts and stuff like that. So I'm an aggregator. So that's why I'm saying if I had questions about certain, camera equipment or certain hiking gear, I'm asking you, because you're in it. That's what you do. That's why most people just ask me. It's I'm reading it anyway.
Yeah. Cool. Well, thanks so much, dude. I appreciate it.
Yeah, for sure.
All right.